Hi everyone, trust our day is going well. So in today's lesson we'll be looking at introduction to selectors. Right, we will try and understand selectors, the different types of selectors that we have in CSS, how they work and how to use them. So to recap, selectors are one part of a CSS rule that come just before CSS declaration blocks. So we have this whole thing is a CSS rule, and in CSS rule we have selectors and we have declaration blocks. So in this example, the selector here is h1, which is an element in HTML, but there are different types of selectors, and that's what we're looking at now. Selectors can be divided into the following categories. Simple selectors. So simple selectors match one or more elements based on element type, class, or ID. So that involves using h1, p, div, img, just element names or classes. You can give your HTML element different classes and IDs, and then using those IDs and classes as selectors. We also have attribute selectors, match one or more elements based on their attributes or attribute values. We also have pseudo classes, matching one or more elements that exist in a certain state, such as an element that is being hovered over by the mouse pointer, or a checkbox that is currently disabled or checked, or an element that is the first child of its parent in the DOM tree. These pseudo classes might be a bit confusing, but just pay attention. What it typically mean is you are selecting elements that is in a certain state, right? So take for example, when I come to the top of the screen here, this toolbar drops down, right? That means I hover over this part of the screen. So this part of the screen is in a certain state currently called hover. So whenever I hover over it, that comes down. So if I hover over it, it comes down. So that is a state. So we have a pseudo class called hover. So pseudo classes just use certain states to apply certain styles to. That's basically what it means. And we have pseudo element, match one or more parts of content that are in a certain position in relation to an element. For example, the first word of each paragraph or generated content appearing just before an element. I think this makes sense. It's a bit straight to the point, but eventually when we start trying them out, it will make more sense. Then we have combinators. These are not exactly selectors themselves, but ways of combining two or more selectors in useful ways for specific selections. So for example, you could select only paragraphs that are direct descendants of divs, or paragraphs that come directly after headings. And we have multiple selectors. Again, these are not separate selectors. The idea is that you can put multiple selectors on the same CSS rule, separated by commas, to apply a single set of declaration to all the elements selected by those selectors. Take for example, I want to make all my headings, my paragraphs, and my lists red. I can say p, h1, h2, h3, h4, h5, get the idea, li, and give it a CSS declaration that says color red. So that way I don't have to write all of them individually. I just apply the same CSS declaration to all the selectors at once. So simple selectors, we have type selectors or element selectors. These selectors is just a case-sensitive match between the selector name and a given HTML element name. This is the simplest way to target all elements of a given type. Let's take a look. Let's take a look, please. Not loot. I'm not looting anything here. For the FCC will come first. Let's take a look at an example. Oh god. Okay, I'm not supposed to have an example. Should I quickly open my text editor so we can see what that looks like? Which one did we do recently? I think we did breakout. Let me open breakout B. Open with sublime text. Okay, so we can just see what a simple selector looks like. That should open any minute from now. We also have class selectors. The class selectors consist of a dot followed by a class name. The class name is any value. Okay, it's finally opened. Let me continue explaining this for now though. A class selector consists of a dot, because I will just show all of them at once. A class selector consists of a dot followed by a class name. A class name is any value without spaces placed within an HTML class attribute. It is up to you to choose a name for the class. It is also noteworthy that multiple elements in a document can have the same class. We've talked about classes, right? We all know how to add classes. Then ID selectors too. But the difference is that for ID, only one element can have an ID at a time. Okay, this should have opened. Great. So what we see here, I don't know if you can see this. If I should make it bigger. Okay. We can see you can see our HTML document, and in it we have simple selectors. Take for example this H4 here. It selects an element which is somewhere in this document. We should have an H4. Okay, I don't think I do. Okay, I changed it, so let me just change this to H2. So we select the H2 which we have here, we have H2 here, we have H2 here. So that's straight to the point, right? It's just an element name. And we also have a class. This is class header that has the declaration of text align right. So we have a div with a class header. You see, it's not as complicated as it sounds, but our plenty English is just plenty English. All you have to do is write your full stop, then the name of your class, and give it the style that you want. Then we also have ID, although there's no ID here, but let me quickly demonstrate it to you. So instead of having a class of subject, we can change this to ID, and that would be all. I will just have to come to the CSS, and instead of the full stop, I change it to hashtag. And that's all. We have subject, and it matches this subject, right? So I believe that is it. Right, we talked about ID, select class, and elements. Okay. If you want to have more, detailed explanation of CSS selectors, you can reach out to me, or you can just go on YouTube and search for it. You get a lot of explanations, right? The developer, you always have to know how to research, solve problems, get more knowledge and understanding, because it's not everything you always know. And if you reach out to me, I'll send you this link here. If you never clicked on it, I have no idea what is there, but I'm going to trust that it's a very good resource, judging from the thumbnail here. Okay. Then we also have pseudo classes and pseudo elements. Pseudo classes. A CSS pseudo class is a keyword added to the end of a selector, preceded by a colon, which is used to specify for what you want to style the selected HTML element, but only when it is in a certain state. For example, you might want to style a link element only when it is being hovered over by the mouse pointer, or a checkbox when it is disabled or checked. Okay. So should we do an example of this? I think we should. There's our text editor. So we have a H1 in our document, right? Do we? Yes, we have a H1. So let me just add a style here. we look at, okay, let's discuss all of them first, then we'll do the examples when we're done. So we have pseudo elements. Pseudo elements are very much like pseudo classes, but they have differences. They are keywords, this time preceded by 2 colons that can be added at the end of selectors to select a certain part of an HTML document. So note this here. They can be added at the end of selectors. So they are not used independently. While for this, it's the same thing. It's a keyword added at the end of a selector. Right? So they are not a standalone selectors. They are just used at the end of selectors. So let's try this out. So let me go for the H1. Let's say we have H1 and we want it to be hover. So let's say background. So that's all. Okay, that is all. Then we have, let's use, which one should we use? Let's use first letter. Let's use first letter. So okay, so let me save this and open it up. Great, so we can see that we have our H1 here. If you check your HTML, you would see the H1 RE colon Eileen Dover University application, right? And what we did was that we said if we are hovering over it, if it is in this state of being hovered, the color should change to green, and if we hover over it, we can see that the color changes to green. Very simple, right? Then we used a pseudo element to say the very first letter in this H1, the color should be brown and the font size should be 40 px. So as you can see here, this R, which is the first letter, is brown and the color is brown, right? And the font size is way bigger than the rest, so it is 40 px. Alright, so that's basically how to use your pseudo elements and pseudo classes. Then we also have units. CSS has several units of expressing length. Many CSS properties take length values such as width, margin, padding, font size, etc. So just like I just did here, I specified font size. Okay, there's also margin, there's which other one? Okay, there's width, there's line height. There are different types of lengths, right? Length is a number followed by a unit, so we usually have 10 px, 2 em. A white space cannot appear between the number and the unit. So a white space, there cannot be a space between this 40 and the px. If I should do that and save it and refresh, you see it's no longer as big as it was because 40 px is no longer working. So for it to work, you have to make sure there's no space in between. Then if the, like it says here, if the value of is 0, the unit can be omitted. So if this value is 0, there's no need to write 0 px. I can just leave it like this, and it is gone because we gave it a size of 0. So of course it is not going to be visible. Let me undo that and save. So back to our explanation. For some CSS properties, negative lengths are allowed. True. There are two types of length units, absolute and relative. Absolute lengths. The absolute length units are fixed, and a length expressed in any of these will appear as exactly that size. Absolute length units are not recommended for use on screen because screen sizes vary so much. However, they can be used if the output medium is known, such as print layout. So these are all different types of length units. So of course, most times we use pixel because it's easier to know how px will be displayed, but these are all valid units you can use too. So I don't know what it will even look like if I change this to, did I close that? That was definitely a mistake. It's plain text. I don't know what will happen if I change this to inches for example. Let's save it and look at that. So you can see it has done a lot. So let me change it to 0.4 and refresh. Okay, yeah, this is way better. So you see it also works, but it's way easier to work with px. Let me try centimeter. Okay, I think for centimeter we can use 4 centimeter. Okay, see, cm works. So let's change this to 40 millimeter. That also works because 40 millimeter and 4 centimeter is the same thing. So let me change this to 80 so that the change will be more dramatic. Okay, great. So we see that all this works, but preferably use px. If you are going for an absolute unit length, just use px. It's way easier to work with, and that's by far the most recommended. It's points, it's pickers. I'm not going to attempt to go into those because I rarely see anyone use them. I don't think they are mainstream. And we also have relative length. Relative length units specify a length relative to another length properties. Relative length units scales between different rendering mediums. So the whole point for relative length is that if you use an absolute length, let's say this one now we are using 80 millimeters. So on a phone it will be 80 millimeters, on a laptop it will be 80 millimeters, on a tablet it will be 80 millimeters, on a television it will be 80 millimeters. So it might be perfect for laptop, but too big for phone or too small for a television, right? That's the problem with absolute units. But when you use relative units, they scale depending on the screen size. So let's look at EM. So EM relative to the font size of the element. So 2am means 2 times the size of the element current font. So that's straight to the point, right? So instead of using say we want the first letter to, let's say, be 3 times the size of the current font size of the whole paragraph. Let's just do 3em, and if you save that, and we'll see this is currently 3 times the size of all the other text in here. Okay, so relative font size are more, relative units rather, are more advisable to use. We have EX, CH, REM, view width, view height, But the most common ones that I've come across in my 6 years or so of doing this, I would say are rem, em, view width, view height, right, and percentage. This is mostly used in no code website building applications. So I'm not saying don't learn how to use all of them. I'm just saying these are probably the ones you want to focus most of your energy on learning how to use them and how they work before you look at the rest, right? Okay, so that's it for units. We can do more crazy things with units. So let's say on hover, I want this h1 to be smaller. I can say width to be 200 px. So if I save it, when I hover, you see the width becomes smaller. It becomes 200 px. That's one of the things you can do. If I change this to 900, then it increases. Say refresh. So I can change this to 100 view width. I save this and I refresh. See, takes up 100% of the view width available to that. And to even be crazier, if I change it to VH, which is view height. So if I hover, okay, that's not changing. Okay, probably because this is inside another. It's probably because it's inside other tags. But that's basically how it works, right? So go ahead and practice, just have fun with it, right? Most of the times these things they are not all there is to CSS, right? But these are very important units of measurements that would help you write more professional looking websites. Because like I explained earlier, you don't want to use an absolute length when you know that your site is going to be accessed from a very wide variety of devices. Like now it's very crazy. Someone might be accessing your website from their Apple Watch or from their Vision OS glasses, or what do you call them? Vision OS devices, whatever they are, whether they are AR or VR now, we don't even know. Or from their laptop or a phone or a tablet or a television, or a console. The amount of devices that people get to use right now to access the internet is crazy. So you cannot restrict yourself to certain design practices that will make that your website or your web page is not user friendly. Okay. This simple web page I built, it is not user friendly at all. So if I inspect this and I change to, you see that everything looks nice. Why? Because everything I used to style it, I kept in mind that this might be accessed on a phone, on a laptop, but still it is not perfect, right? This is not the perfect ideal scenario of how I would want it to look on a phone. But the fact that I used, if I change this here, where is it? 3 rem. If I change it to, let's see, 50 px and save. You see, it doesn't look great on mobile because we want it to be way bigger, but the style is not really applying. But if I should X this, you see that it is way bigger. So to get your preferred styling on mobile, there's something called mobile responsiveness. But before you even go into all that, it starts from the little things that you do, the units that you use, and how you structure your code. But all that, we'll look into it eventually. You don't have to worry about it now. For now, just try your best to practice with every single unit you see here. Just practice with them, know what it looks like, know how it works. Then over in our next lesson, we'll look at cascade. Okay, because the cascade that's a part of the name has to mean something, right? Cascading style sheet. So of course that comes from cascade. We have to know why cascade is part of the name and what cascade means. So I'm looking forward to the next class already. See you guys in the next one. Do have a lovely day.